Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's episode review. This time we will be reviewing episode 2 of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's. I do apologize about a bit of a delay in this video. Honestly, yesterday I was just feeling a little out of it. It was Easter, so I just kind of took the day for myself, but I am right back at it with Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's content. Normally, you can expect my reviews to come out on Sunday, maybe sometime Saturday night, and sometimes it'll be a little later in the week, but 90% of the time, it usually will come out on Sunday, so I do apologize for the minor delay, but I am more than excited to talk to you guys about the second episode of 7's. Generally speaking, what did I think about the episode? I liked it. I thought it was another good episode. I wasn't blown away by it. I didn't think it was an incredible episode. But again, it's early on. You're still world building. You're still building up the characters. And you're still introducing the viewers to rush duels. And that to me was probably the most noticeable thing about this duel. Every time there was something being done in rush duels that normally wouldn't happen, like drawing until your hand is full, or starting with 4 cards, or summoning a bunch of monsters at once. Anytime something like that happened, it was reiterated by the spectators, the other students that were watching the duel between Rook and Yuga, and by Gakuto, and I think even ROMIN did it once or twice. So they're still introducing the viewers to rush duels. Episode 1 I thought did a very good job of that, and in this episode I thought they did a very good job of that. There still are some questions in regards to the format, like extra deck, for instance. We don't have any rush duel extra deck cards, but I think going forward, there's probably going to be less of that. I think after these 2 duels, we now know the premise of rush duels. We know the basics of rush duels, and I think even if you're a young child watching this, I think you pretty much get the gist now. And so the duel in this episode felt very tutorial-like, kind of like it did in the first episode, which is not a bad thing, by the way. They're still introducing us to the new style of play. I just thought that was one of the more noticeable things from this episode. The duel itself, though, was good. The duel itself was pretty fun, and it had a very shocking result because this is the first time that we have seen, think about this, really think about this. This is the first time the main protagonist of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime has lost since Yuya Sakaki lost to Sergei way back when Arc 5 was still in the Synchro dimension. That was like episode 90 of Arc 5. It has literally been probably 3.5 to 4 years since we have seen the main protagonist of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime lose. That is insane, but I'm really happy they did it, if not for the fact that they are not afraid of doing it. They are not afraid of giving the main protagonist a loss, where it seemed like Vrains, they were afraid to do it. There were opportunities where where Playmaker could have lost a duel, and Playmaker went undefeated the entirety of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, which was a big complaint I had with the show, and I know it was a big complaint a lot of people had with the show. He was an invincible protagonist, and I just like when a main protagonist loses from time to time. I think it adds unpredictability into every duel. I mean, more than halfway through Vrains, we knew that Yusaku was never going to lose a duel, and the fact that Yuga's already lost early on, which it seems like episode 2 is a kiss of death for Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists. I'm pretty sure that Yuma lost to Bronk in episode 2. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yuya definitely lost to Yuzu in episode 2. Yugi technically lost to Pegasus in episode 2. And so episode 2, I think also Yusei had the flashback where he lost to Jack in episode 2. Granted, that was a flashback. But episode 2's continue to just be an episode where the main protagonist seems to go through some sort of trial, at least early on in the show, and Yuga did in this episode. There were not really any stakes on the line, except Rook did not want this to be broadcasted to everyone, understandably so, because his theory is, hey, if rush duels are made public, if rush duels are out there for everyone, Goha Corporation is going to know instantly, and they are going to immediately be able to figure out who was the one that created rush duels. We are all going to get screwed. All 4 of us are going to lose our accounts, and any dream we have about being the Duel King, which another thing that I really liked in this episode is he basically said, the title of Duel King doesn't interest me, Rook, you can have it. And Rook made his decision extremely fast, like he didn't really care for what Yuga was saying, just the fact that he was going to be able to be the Duel King, which I actually thought was pretty funny. But it speaks to Yuga's personality, and I gotta be honest, I really do like Yuga as a protagonist. I'm enjoying Yuga way more than I thought I would through 2 episodes. With Yuma and Yugioh, the other 2 youngins of the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise, it took me a while to really like them, especially Yuma. I ended up liking Yuma a little more than Yugioh, but Yuma, it took me a very long time before I was really invested in him and what he was standing for and all the development that he had later on in Zexal. But Yuga, I really like his personality. He's fun, he's outgoing, he wants to make everyone smile, which reminds me a lot of Yuya Sakaki, wanting to make everyone smile, wanting to bring enjoyment to everyone through a new, less strict, more fun style of dueling. And his personality, he's very selfless. He's like, even though he's the one that beat Hologram Man, even though he's the one that installed Rush Duels, he's like, yeah, Rook, you can have Duel King. It doesn't really interest me. I just want everyone to be happy. Like, that's a really wholesome reasoning. And so Yuga, I have really enjoyed early on in this series, as well as Rook and ROMIN. And I think that's the big difference for me with Sevens early on and with Zexal. With Zexal, it really wasn't until Kaito showed up where I was like, all right, this is getting good. With Sevens, I already kind of feel that way, because with Zexal, I didn't really like the numbers club. I didn't like a lot of Yuma's early opponents, like Flip Turner and Caswell. They didn't really do it for me. But with this show, even though Gakuto is, Gakuto is Gakuto, I really like ROMIN, and I really like Rook, and I'm enjoying Yuga a lot. So the characters have been way more enjoyable for me than I thought they would this early on in the show. And so they're dueling for that. Rook wants to make sure that Rush Duels don't get out to anyone, and Yuga wants it to be broadcasted to everyone. And in a way, Yuga wins this duel. Even though he ends up losing the duel, Rook summons Dragears, he smashes Yuga's trap card or face down that would have been able to save him. And another thing that I liked about the duel is Yuga had a chance to win. Had he drawn a certain attributed monster to give Sevens Road Magician another 300 attack point boost, it's the same way that he beat Hologram Man. He would have beat Rook, but he drew the monster, and it was not, I think he needed fire, and I'm not sure what the other attribute that he needed was, but he ended up drawing a spell, so it was completely irrelevant, and he failed, and that's very realistic. We see so often in Yu-Gi-Oh, and I'm sure we'll see it in Sevens because we see it in every show, that the protagonist is always able to draw the exact card that he needs, but very early on, you're sending a message to the youngins that might be watching the show. That does not usually happen. That does not happen all the time, and because the heart of the cards were not there for Yuga in this episode, he ends up losing to Rook. He didn't get the draw that he needed, which happens so often in real life. It's a much more accurate representation of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I really like that aspect of it, that's kind of the reason why he lost. Rook was able to summon Dragears, and Rook was able to mitigate that face-down card and win the duel. And so Rook surprisingly wins, but Yuga still ultimately wins because he was secretly using his drone to record the entire duel. And to me, it showed that Yuga didn't really care if he won or not. I've seen a few people write to me on Twitter that Yuga could have won had he wanted to, based on the cards that he had. And so, if that's the case, a very early theory would be that maybe he didn't want to win that way because he wanted it to be a little more exciting. He wanted it to be a little more dramatic, knowing that they were live streaming, which, by the way, all the references to YouTube and Twitch with the live streaming and the likes and the comments and the video boards, that was incredible and very relevant with how popular those sites are and how popular video sharing sites are and streaming sites. And Yuga maybe knew that because everyone was watching, he wanted it to be a little more dramatic. He wanted there to be a little more flair. And so instead of winning, he went for the spectacular finish, came up short, and lost. Although maybe that wasn't the motive, because even though Rook at the end says, oh man, you could have beaten me, but you let me win. You're the best, Yuga. I'm so glad I put my trust in you. And he's like laughing uncomfortably because I think he realizes that like he could have lost. But based on Yuga's reaction and ROMIN and Gakuto's commentary, I don't think that Yuga realized he could have won, which would kind of mitigate the theory of, oh, well, Yuga was just doing it for bonus points, for spectacularism. So I don't know. It's interesting, but it also really speaks to Yuga's character that he is, at heart, very similarly to another protagonist we've seen, an entertainer. And so the duel and everything around it was very enjoyable. The only reason I didn't think the episode was, like, phenomenal is because of the tutorial commentary. While I feel like it's necessary, it did take a little bit away from the duel. It broke the action up a little bit, at least in my opinion. But everything else was solid. The lead up to the duel, the reasoning for dueling, and that is how you write a duel with stakes that aren't life or death. Which, coming off the show in Vrains, where probably 90% of the duel was life or death in the sense of losing the Ignis or genuinely dying, it's such a breath of fresh air. Like, there are stakes in this duel. If Rook wins, even though there were really no stakes because no matter what, it was being broadcasted, but if Rook wins, no one finds out about rush dueling. It's kept under the rug. And if Yugioh wins, everyone finds out about rush dueling. There are stakes. It makes the duel a little more interesting, but it also gives the writers the option of having either character win because the stakes aren't life or death. And that's what I enjoyed about this duel quite a bit. And then the end, which I'm sure a lot of you are going to comment on, and this is the part that I really want to talk to you guys about. We finally see Mr. Goha and Goha Corporation. They're receiving an insane amount of calls, and Mr. Goha, with probably one of his right-hand mans or one of his executives, is walking back to his office. And I mean, I'm laughing even thinking about it. His executive asks him, what are we going to do? What should we do? I mean, the calls are insane. Rush dueling is a thing. What's going to happen? And you just hear Mr. Goha laugh. And he just laughs very unsettlingly and walks into the room by himself. Sits in his chair. His actually office is really cool until the phone pops out. He's got like a 1700s phone, but the chair tucks him in, gets him close to the desk. The phone pops up. He answers the phone, and it's this little girl, which maybe is his daughter. It obviously is someone that has to be related to him or very close to him. The girl sounds like she's 4 or 5 years old because there's no way a regular citizen has a direct line to his office. At least I wouldn't imagine so. So this is probably maybe his daughter or someone close to him. At least that's an early theory. And I think she says something about how rush duels are so fun. And you just hear him laugh again. And even the girl goes, huh? And he just keeps laughing. And that's how the episode ends. Which I am going to say this. I have no idea what to make of that scene. I have processed this for about 48 hours now, and I have no idea what to make of this scene. Is he going to be a comedic villain? Is he going to be a really unhinged and threatening villain? Is he going to be a typical Saturday morning comedy villain? I have no idea. It really is way too early to say. Maybe he's going to be a joke of a villain and be more goofy and more silly, which would be kind of weird for Yugioh. I mean, if it's done correctly, it still could be interesting. We've never really had someone like that in Yugioh. It reminds me a little bit of Maximilian Pegasus, right? The fun-spirited, the goofiness, the goofy nature of Pegasus, the kiddish nature. Of course, he hasn't done anything nearly as menacing as Pegasus yet in the grand scheme of things, so it's a very loose comparison, and I wouldn't go on record saying that they're one and the same or he's based off of Pegasus at all. Not yet. But whether he's going to be an absolutely out-of-his-mind villain, and that's what the laughter and the very unnerving laughter symbolizes, or whether he's going to be a comedic villain that's not actually threatening at all, remains to be seen. One last thing, Rook's backstory was very interesting. He got this power that allows him to break electric machines and electrical devices. Because of that, he was able to duel with adults and refine his skills, and he keeps saying that there is a demon within him that gave him this power. The music that was playing during the backstory was very unsettling. The backstory itself was not that unsettling. It also looks like Rook might come from a wealthy background based on his father or father figure in that picture having a monocle, and it looked like there was a very nice house in the background. How did Rook get this power? Gakuto and Yuga talk about how it could just be this concept that some other scientist has experienced before, but I don't know. I feel like there's going to be more there. But at the same time, the music definitely made it a little more creepy than it should have been, which is actually hilarious looking back at it. Like, the music makes it seem like he lost his entire family to some serial killer, and he's out for revenge against him. Like, go back and watch the scene and listen to the music. It is very unsettling. But then when you think about it, it's just him being able to shut down electrical devices, and he used that to Duel adults. Like, it really isn't that dark, but the music made it way more unsettling than it should have been. But guys, there was a lot to this episode. There was a lot that I enjoyed, and overall, it was another good episode. Next week, it looks like it's going to be Yuga versus ROMIN, so I am really excited for that. Let me know all your thoughts on episode 2, and of course, Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s as a whole thus far. A big thank you to my Platinum tier patrons Alexa Baker, Glen McGookin, Jorge Carrillo, Horace Maye, Goosey Q, Vincent Van Der Veen, Panther J, Smith620, Jorge Leon, Blue Maiden 28, Jarrett Buller, and Gabe G, and to my Diamond tier patrons Jesse Wood, Latrell Smith, Sean, and Melinda Phantom, and to my Egyptian God tier patron, Syn Cloud. Thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon and who is a YouTube channel member. Would not be able to do this without all of you. I will talk to you down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.